Hey everyone, it's Carol Foderick here from the Carol Foderick Real Estate Group, and welcome to episode 5, season 1. I don't know if I need to say season 1. Like there hasn't been another season.
Helpful,
Episode 5 of the best thing about real estate is.
Yeah.
And I am so excited today because I'm joined by two of my team members today, Gabriella Wagner and Emily McIntyre.
Yes.
McIntyre. I feel
Yeah.
like this is just commonly half the team calls you
I
one.
know.
It's a Scottish
Yeah,
thing, right?
It is. And they took the A out. The A would have been so helpful to keep in.
Why?
Like,
I
I
don't
don't know who took
I-
it out a couple generations ago, but I honestly do wish it was in there because it's McIntyre. Yeah.
I
What
agree
is it on your
entirely.
birth-
No, it's MC. It's like,
Oh,
it's
okay.
like McIntyre is like if you were to pronounce it and you didn't know to say Mac, like, yeah, it would be
Okay.
McIntyre.
So Emily and Gabriella are rental specialists, and we are here to talk today about finding the perfect rental. This is, I feel like, a unicorn topic,
Is there
right?
such
Like-
a thing?
Well, that's what we're going to unpack today, Gabriella.
Exactly.
So it's a bit of a unicorn. So for the vast majority of people who eventually enter into the homeownership stream, most people start in a rental space. So, you leave your parents' home, you end up in a rental space for some time, and then you eventually buy a home, or at least that's the goal for most people.
Mhm.
It's these intervening years, which we want to talk about today. So, fun fact, the average age of a first-time buyer has increased. And we heard this stat at a conference we were at a couple
Yep.
of months ago. Do you guys remember what the average age of a first-time buyer is now?
35.
I thought it was 38.
It's
I thought it
38
was
now. It's
yeah.
gone up from
38,
35
yeah.
to 38.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, if the average person leaves home or student housing somewhere in around the age of now 22, 23, which is later than it's ever been,
Yeah.
by the way, the average person leaves home around that age. That's 15 years of being in rental. And so you're probably not only going to be in one rental, you're probably going to be in several rentals.
Mhm.
And so we're going to unpack that today. What is a perfect rental? Does it exist? How do you find one?
Mm.
So Emily, I want to start with you because you are one of our top leasing agents on the team. You do a ton of rentals every year. And I'll take a step back.
Yeah.
As a team, we do about 250 lease transactions a year, which is a ginormous number. I don't know if there's another team in Canada that does that many, but 250, some representing landlords, some representing the tenant,
Mhm.
but residential leases. You work with many of our lease clients.
Mhm.
Does the perfect rental exist, in your opinion?
I mean, I would say as perfect as it can get. I mean, I would
Yeah, fair.
I think so. Like the clients are always really happy. So, I don't think there's anything that's perfect in this world. I don't even think you can find the perfect home to purchase either. So, but
True.
amazing rentals are definitely out there. So I'll say that.
I love it. Okay, that's a great. And Gabriella, perfect rental, does it exist? Fact or fiction?
I think it could be a fact because really, I mean, everyone, whatever they find makes it their perfect home.
I guess
Makes
it's
it
perspective,
their-
right?
Perspective.
It's
Yeah.
everyone's own little, like what makes your home, right? Like,
Okay. So so perfect. We both believe that perfect exists in some iteration of that. Okay.
yeah.
So let's talk about the process because finding the perfect rental really has two components, right? And we're going to unpack both of them today. It's going to be the space itself,
Mhm.
making sure that, the space is as perfect for you as you can find it, whatever that looks like. And for everybody, that's different. The second part is when we're talking about the perfect rental is the perfect lease and
Yeah.
what does the paperwork or the legal side of it
Mhm.
look like? Because I think that you can have a perfect space. And if you are in an imperfect legal relationship with your landlord or vice versa, it's not going to be a perfect
No.
rental, regardless of how much you actually love the physical space. So
Yeah.
the search for the physical
Mhm.
space, what does it look like? Where does it start? Emily, I'll start with you. So you get a client referred into, as
Yeah.
many of your clients do. What does that look like? What does the process look like?
So typically I just get on the phone with them, chat with them, just kind of see what their situation is. Why, like I start with the why, like why are you moving? I think that's the biggest question because sometimes, they shouldn't really be moving. If they have a great lease right now, a great space for a great price, but they just want to move to try a different neighborhood, like usually not worth it. So they're, starting with the why, most of the time, there is a fair reason to move or to want to move or find a rental.
Yeah, like work relocation, budget changes, like you can
Exactly.
afford
Yeah.
more, you can afford less. Like there's
Yeah.
sometimes a legitimate
Yeah,
reason.
exactly.
Or are they getting kicked out and you want to know why?
Oh, I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
getting kicked out by a
Yeah.
family member. That's Gabriella's week. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's-
exactly. Yeah, finding the why, and then seeing kind of timelines, and then really going into what they're looking for. But really just starts with talking to a professional.
So let's unpack that, because you talked about the fact that, you can start your search with a real estate professional. And I think that it is a big misconception that real estate agents or realtors or brokers are involved only in the home purchase or sale process. But we do a huge number of rental listings. And many of our clients are referred into us. What are the advantages of working with a real estate professional? Gabriella, I'll ask you that question maybe first. You're a real estate professional. Somebody gets referred into you. Why would somebody work with a real estate agent to be able to work through their rental search?
It's that assurance knowing that someone is going to do the homework. They're gonna follow. Like a lot of people don't even know that, as a real estate agent, you do leases, like you do rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, why is that beneath me or what? Like, no, we do it all. But yeah, you want to make sure that, because we have the information, the background to be able to do that kind of stuff, do the back checking, the vetting process, to make sure that, you're getting either the right landlord or you're getting the right tenant. Because the last thing you want is you get someone in there, you can't get them out.
Yeah, and vice versa. If you get into a bad lease with a landlord,
Yeah.
you're in a legal contract with them. You mentioned something, and I want to just walk back to it. You said, is it beneath me? It is a true statement, though, that many agents choose not to do leases because they don't feel that it's a valuable use of their time. How does that, land with you as a real estate professional, Gabriella? Because you work, I see you firsthand, both of you really, work just as hard on a lease deal as you will on the sale of a $2 million home.
Because there's no difference. You're working for the client, the customer. You are working for that person to find them their perfect home, whether it's a rent or whether it's a buy or sell. It's their home. Everyone has the right to be somewhere. And that's as an agent, that's your job.
I agree. I love it. That's absolutely true. I think the client relationship is really important. So we're filming in my house right now, guys, and my dog has decided that he is going to maybe make a cameo appearance. I love this. The dog's like 100 years old. Everybody who knows me knows Dino. Yes, Dino is still alive and well, and Dino may or may not make an appearance.
Hey, buddy.
It's organic. No, see, he's just moseying on his way. He just wanted to come and click
Check it
across
out.
the hardwood floor. I love. He's probably going to go sit down
he's
now.
Here.
But so some agents don't. And I think you're right. It's kind of disrespectful to the fact that everybody's housing journey looks a little bit different. But let's talk about the logistics. So you hire a real estate professional. When I say hire, you get the impression that means your services cost you something. How are we compensated as real estate professionals working with a tenant client?
So we're compensated by the landlord. So by any landlord of any property that you pick that's listed on MLS, we are compensated. It's the same thing as if you were to be a buyer. Working with the buyer's agent who's compensated from the seller.
The other side.
Exactly.
So to be clear, you're getting services from this person, but you are not paying for them, even though they are legally required to represent your interests, which I think is great. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Exactly.
They think they have to go it alone. So the average person,
a lot of tenants think that, oh my gosh, I can't afford to pay rent and
representation
and pay for someone to represent me.
And they don't
realize that, well, you're not paying me though.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. The compensation comes from the other side, even though our legal responsibility is towards our tenant client.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this logistically. The vast majority of people who attempt to, enter the rental market will do so on their own. They're going to in the olden days, they pick up the classifieds, but now they're going online. It's Facebook Marketplace. It's, here in Canada, viewit.ca, like there's, third-party rental sites.
Yeah.
What does the experience look like when they're trying to navigate it on their own, Emily?
Like there's so many challenges that come with trying to find listings on your own. Like, first of all, I would say like almost every site out there, there's no way to regulate what's still available, what's legitimate.
Yeah.
If it's actually the listing agent.
Now.
Like it's like you don't even know who's representing this, whose listing it is, where the address is half the time if it's on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started on Facebook Marketplace, to be honest.
It is the wild west of rentals. Like you don't know who you're talking to, whether it's real or not real or available. And
exactly. Yeah. So it's so like there's no real like filters that you can put in. You can't tell how long it's been on the market half the time. You don't really know kind of what just if it's a fair rental price, even like you have nothing to go on besides your own judgment call. So
compare that against what's the experience is once you get referred into a buyer client. What does that look like?
So for a tenant client referred in, it as an agent, you have first of all market knowledge, market experience. Like we do this, like most people, as we were saying earlier, only you'll rent maybe 2 to 3, maybe 4 places in your lifetime. Like we do that in a month, sometimes easily in a week even.
Yeah.
And like just having all this experience of market knowledge, rental prices, we also can see what it's leased, like what something is leased for in the past couple of months. So we have an idea of what's fair, what's not, what we can negotiate on, what you can't negotiate on. We negotiate for you also on that point. And just, having someone guide you and who can also tell you, this is rent control, this one's not. Here's it.
We're going to come back to that in a minute, the rent control, because I think that comes into the legal part. People do not realize that. And that's
it's overwhelming.
Exactly.
The whole process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
very overwhelming.
Much. Yeah. You need someone who knows the steps and can guide you and give their expertise.
What's legal,
on,
what's not,
exactly.
what's to be expected, what market
especially
conditions.
if someone has been trying to find something and they're out of luck and their agent is not willing to help them.
Okay, so let's talk about that, Gabriella, because I think you mentioned about people who are trying to navigate the process and really struggling with it. So there are every tenant has every tenant will have different qualifications for the space that they're applying for. Generally speaking, a landlord is looking at income ratios, they're looking at debt ratios, they're looking at length of employment. The biggest one often though is the credit history. And so when you find somebody who is perhaps new to Canada, doesn't have a great rental doesn't have a current landlord references, doesn't have a great income score, has a low income relative to the amount of rent that they're looking at spending. How do you assist somebody that is really challenged and has probably been turned down multiple times? And I always joke that you are like the queen of the hard to place tenants. You will literally move heaven and earth to find people housing, which is so admirable because so many,
because
people
I feel for them.
Okay. So
honestly.
let's talk about that. How do you place a hard to place tenant? How do you assist somebody that is challenged in getting accepted?
You've got to get all your information. You've got to do all that research. So you've got to find out, why are they being denied? Is it because of their credit score? Is it because of there may be just one document that's missing, but the agent's too lazy to tell them what it is? Oh, you just got denied. Sorry.
Or the landlord's not telling them. Which is their lawful right. The landlord doesn't have to give a reason for refusal.
No. And you're going to get, all kinds of things, and they won't tell you why.
And so you can look at a set of documents and say, okay, I think that this is probably the reason. And sometimes it's fixable. Like it's a real, like you're missing
absolutely.
a document.
I mean, we've had where it's a matter of paying off 2 credit cards,
like small credit cards that were hugely affecting their credit score.
And it's like $1,000. Yeah. To some that may be a huge problem, but if it's doable, pay it off in installments, like just get it paid down. And that changes everything because it changes the number on that credit score as well. And that compares to the credit score and whatever else is in the report, showing that, okay, there may have been delinquency, but look at, hey, they're
on the right track now.
They're on the right track. Maybe, I don't know, something came in, something happened, one got sick or like, for example, COVID happened, right? A lot of people were stuck.
Yeah, there was income, challenges during COVID. So I will say, I think it's about telling the story of your client.
And you find out as much as possible about that client. And then you're the representation.
I was also going to just
advocating for them.
Yeah. After looking through their profile and just having open conversations, like very open and honest, we have it's our fiduciary duty to keep this confidential and we're not going to go tell anyone about this stuff. We don't share it with anyone. It's kept very securely and private. But so after having that conversation, if there's nothing that can be changed, if there's no credit cards that can be paid off, like talking about workarounds, maybe adding in a guarantor if that's possible.
Finding a solution.
Finding a solution,
exactly. And advocating on their behalf. So let's talk about the other side. So Emily, you've got a client. They are AAA candidates. Excellent income, excellent credit, great landlord references. Why would they work with a real estate professional when they could likely get accepted for most rentals, on their own without any assistance? What value do you bring to those relationships?
Oh, well, first of all, it's again the market knowledge. I've said that again, but really it is huge. So it can't be understated.
Because there is no digital repository where you can go online and say, okay, I can see that the last 15 units in this building that are, with this floor plan rented for this is, you have access to this as a licensed realtor.
Exactly.
In Ontario, but not the general public doesn't.
Exactly. And again, guiding them throughout the process of, which ones, again, with negotiating power, like they have AAA tenants do have a lot of negotiating power, and that as an agent, you're able to leverage that with the list the co-operating agent and the landlord.
So really important, I think, because you talk about negotiating power, having a profile that is strong enough to be able to negotiate doesn't necessarily impart negotiating skills on behalf of so unless you work in commission sales and you're used to negotiating things for a living, even though you have the negotiating power, you may not have like the wherewithal to actually do the negotiating. So hiring somebody that will do that negotiation on your behalf.
Yeah. And knows what you can push. Maybe you can't push the rental price, but you can push the possession date, just stuff like that. An agent will guide you. Yeah. And it's also a case by case basis. Like you're not going to have the same power for every rental. So maybe some are going to be, you might have movement on both sides or in both the possession date and price and deposit, just all these things. And then in addition, just walking someone through the paperwork, answering questions. Like we know how to explain these forms forwards and backwards. And like most people, I don't know if anyone's actually read all 14 pages of the Ontario Standard Lease, but I sure have.
Well, I can guarantee they haven't read the hundreds and hundreds of pages that represent the Residential Tenancies Act here in Ontario. Yeah. So it's it's an interesting conversation. So let's move back because I want to get to the legal part of that because that's super important. Yeah. But let's talk about the fact that finding the perfect rental is the physical space, and then it's the actual legal lease agreement that exists. Does the perfect physical space exist, and can you help somebody find that? So, Gabriella, let me ask you. Somebody comes to you, they've got a geographic area in mind. They've got a set image in their mind of what the rental is going to look like. And they have a specific closing date. Can you grant everything to everybody that is on their wish list?
If there's an unlimited budget, absolutely. If there's not, then
usually something has to give.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That's a great perspective, I think.
It's
Can I quote Amanda, one of our fellow teammates on here? That real estate, is it the market that's the genie, or is it that we're the genies?
Yeah, we're the genies. Your 2 wishes of the real estate market. Exactly. You don't get 3, you get 2 in real estate.
Yeah, this isn't Aladdin. The 3, so real estate agents are a genie. We can give you the location and the price, but we can't give you the house, or we can give you the house and the location, but not the price, or what's the third variation?
Prioritizing.
And so I think that's really it. So it's prioritizing, right? Exactly. It's no different. Like there's that same saying goes for contractors. I can do it fast and cheap, but it won't be quality. I can do it quality and fast, but it won't be cheap. But so it really is the same premise holds true. Yeah. And I think, we get a ton of referrals, and most commonly, I think we'll talk about, people coming to the GTA for the first time who don't have an awareness of what things cost. And I mean, relative to other places in the world, Hong Kong and New York, we're not as expensive as those places, but we are one of the most expensive places in North America to live. And often people from other places, even in Southern Ontario or Central Ontario, are shocked at what our rental prices actually are. So, you get somebody that refers us in a client, and sometimes they're coming from somewhere else in Canada, or they're coming here for school. And they're like, okay, I want parking. I need great natural light. I need 900 square feet, and I need to be, walkable to campus. And my budget's $1,500. How do you solve that problem?
Yeah.
Emily?
I mean, you graciously say that, this is just not the rental market that we're working with here. Like we need to kind of go back and reprioritize what, is the most important. If it's being close to university or your work or transit, like that's like, let's start there with location, and then we'll fit in.
How long are you willing to commute?
Yeah. And then budget, we'll see budget. There's a lot of times where like, I'd also love to spend $1,500 a month on rent too for a 900 square foot condo, but that's just not realistic. And we're not going to find that. So, just because seeing if what you'd like to spend, if we can increase that to what's you're able to spend, I don't want to max out anyone's budget here, but I also, we need to adjust to what the market is. Like the market doesn't really care about your budget, unfortunately.
Being realistic.
I think Gabriella, and you mentioned that because you work with a lot of downsizer clients, and so they back out the cost of the rental. So they're selling their home, they're backing out of the cost of the rental what they can afford to spend from a monthly budget. And it's important that you don't overspend, but it does sometimes mean that you have to readjust what your expectation is, right?
Exactly. If it means that you cannot be in the area that you want to be in, maybe a little bit outside of it.
Or a smaller space, but you stick to that.
Yeah. Or like something's got to compromise. Unless you're willing to up the budget or take back a couple of other things that you're adamant about being in an area, well, this is what is going in that area, then you've got to up the ante here a little bit. You've got to,
one way or the other.
yeah.
It's just all about knowing what is the most important things to you, like, and just working backwards. But you can't have a list of 15 things that are important. Like if everything's
What's the
important, then
most
nothing's
There
important.
have to
I
be
agree.
realistic expectations.
I would say like location and then and budget, really, like what, and if you're looking for like bedroom size as well, like it also depends on who you're trying to live with as well. So
Yeah. And so let's unpack that a little bit, because the budget is obviously important, budget and location. Let's talk about the physical space, because very often people will come to us and it's true fact. Sometimes they come with almost an unlimited budget, or a budget that is so generous that they could afford anything in a particular neighborhood they're looking for, but they're at odds with the realities of what housing stock actually exists in that neighborhood. And I'll give you an example. I do a ton of rentals. I own a big rental portfolio. A lot of it is in West downtown Toronto. And I'll get people who are like, I really want to live in the Junction or Roncesvalles or Bloor West Village or the Annex, but I need garage parking. I need a walk-in closet. I want an ensuite bathroom. And the reality is the physical space doesn't match of what they're looking for, doesn't match the reality of the type of housing stock that is built there. So maybe Emily, can you talk to that a little bit? How do you realign your expectation? Because size is a big issue for people. They don't want to live in 500 square feet, but they want to be in new construction in the downtown core.
Yeah.
Like talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So just really like about, like pulling up the MLS, just like literally going through it with them sometimes, and even just explaining like and showing like this is what's available. Like there's a ton of inventory, but only like 3 of them have parking spots if you're lucky, right? Like in the West End, when these houses were over like hundreds of years old before cars were like
invented. Yeah, that's
thing.
the reality, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Or the size of your vehicle doesn't fit in the parking that is available, which is a challenge.
Or you're not, street parking is something you're not interested in. Like then, it's challenging.
And older condominiums have bigger spaces.
Yeah.
By square footage wise, but they may not have parking.
Yeah. Or you're not, or most of the older ones do actually have parking, but you're not going to have that modern finish that, everyone wants, or not, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people really like it. Right.
Yeah.
So
understanding just what the asset class looks like in the neighborhood,
in the neighborhood.
What, and then when you apply that to a budget, that's also challenging.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So finding the perfect space, maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't, maybe it's in your budget, maybe it doesn't. Let's talk about the other part of finding a perfect rental, which is the legal component of it. So first I want to start off with rent controlled versus non-rent controlled, because this is, I think, the biggest misunderstood part of leasing in the province of Ontario. Many tenants to this day do not realize that there are rent controlled units and non-rent controlled units. And I unfortunately get the calls on the back end when somebody leased something themselves and then find out a year later that they're in a non-rent controlled unit because the market has escalated and the landlord is legally entitled to raise the rent at their discretion.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So non-rent controlled versus rent controlled. And we give us a definition of on the dates for occupancy.
So for any residential units that were built after and occupied, I think is the date. It's the
occupancy date, yeah.
Occupancy date after November 15th, 2018 is not subject to the provincial rent controls. So the landlord tenant board will set each year a rent control. It's usually between
the allowable increase
of rent for landlords on every other type of rental. And that will be between 1 to 2.5, 3, maybe at the highest.
Yeah, it depends. It's based on the cost of living, but
cost of living, inflation fluctuates. The highest we've seen as the past couple of years because inflation has been high, but it's a whole nother story.
2.5 this year.
2.5 has been for this year and last year. Yeah.
But fair, on the high side, but still fair, significantly less usually than how the market appreciates.
Exactly. So
you rent a non-rent controlled unit. So something built, which is huge amounts of, housing stock now, because you think about how much the GTA has changed in the last 7 years. Towers exist where towers weren't before.
Yeah, a ton of these new skyscrapers, like
laneway houses, laneway houses,
new
garden
townhouse developments.
All of these non-rent controlled. So what does that mean for a tenant?
So that means, after the 1 year is up, or not even after the 1 year, after 90 days before your 1 year lease is up, the landlord is legally allowed to increase the rent by whatever they want. They can do it once a year, but they can do it by however much they want.
Yep.
It's kind of almost like
the tenant doesn't have to pay it. You do have the right to leave, but to be clear, you can, the landlord can increase it. And it would be a fair statement that landlords improperly use this
for sure
as a lever to be able to evict a tenant when they want them gone. So there is nothing stopping them from raising the rent from $2,000 to $5,000 a month Again, you don't have to pay it, but you do have to
Yeah.
leave if you don't want to pay it. So they're using it
Exactly.
incorrectly as
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lever to be able to
Yeah.
evict a tenant. Compare that to rent control. So something that was occupied for residential purposes prior to November 15th, 2018, rent control looks like
Like maybe a $60 increase once a year and that's even kind of high. That's
it depends the
Yeah.
percentage of the original base
Yeah,
rent.
yeah.
But
Right now it's
exactly.
probably like about $42,
If it-
depending. If
Depending
it's
on, it all depends on what.
depends
yeah,
on what the base rent
prices,
is and
yeah.
what the
Yeah.
allowable rent increase
Yeah.
is. How do you tell if you're a tenant that's not, because as realtors we have access to land
Mhm.
registry and I can see what the date of registration was on a condo corporation and
Yeah.
when occupancy happened. How do you navigate that as a tenant not working with a real estate professional?
Yeah, you really can't. There's not really a great way to verify that. You
Because landlords
cross your
don't often know
fingers.
themselves. If they bought the unit
exactly.
a
Yeah.
year ago, they don't really necessarily know what the original
Yeah.
occupancy date was.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
So challenging. So,
Mhm.
okay. So rent controlled versus non-rent control, super important to
Yeah.
finding a perfect unit because you can find that space, location, price
Yep.
that you absolutely love.
Yeah.
And then you find out it's not rent controlled. Is it perfect anymore?
Yeah.
Not
I
so
don't know.
much.
If
Not
you're
so-
only planning on staying for a year, I guess, sure.
Yeah.
maybe.
But
Yeah.
if your plans change at all, you could face eviction or you could face a hugely escalated
Yeah.
rent.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about the residential tenancy, the residential tenancy agreement. We call it the RTA or the
Mhm.
Ontario Standard Lease. What is the importance of understanding and having that be an accurate document relative to finding the perfect place? Because again, is a perfect apartment truly perfect if you get into a legal mess with your landlord?
Without that paper, you don't have a lease.
Yeah.
You don't have a
Yeah.
lease. That is correct. So it's a relatively new document, relatively
Mhm.
like in the last 5 years. Prior to that, if you wanted to rent an apartment, you could go to a landlord. Landlord would drop a lease, or sometimes not even. Sometimes you have a verbal lease.
Mhm.
Mhm.
The Ontario government made moves to streamline this so that there was one acceptable lease document that would apply to all residential leases. If you don't have that document signed or it's not properly executed, you don't have a lease agreement.
You don't have
You
a
could go in
fight-
front of the
you don't
board
have
and
a
argue.
fighting chance.
You could go in front of the board and argue it. Certainly on the landlord side, you don't have a lease
Yeah.
agreement if the
No.
tenant wanted to back out. But as a tenant, you might be able to argue your way that a lease exists, but it's certainly not straightforward.
No.
And so it's important to remember that, you
That's
need to
your
have somebody
guarantee.
that's your
Mhm.
guarantee. What's in the lease is what
Yeah.
the law is for you. So,
Mhm.
understanding the Residential Tenancies Act. So this
Yeah.
is a very, very complex, it's a very complex document. There are many things that are in the Residential Tenancies Act that many landlords and tenants don't understand or don't know. Why is it important to work with a real estate professional who knows how to navigate
It's
that
important
tenancy
to
agreement?
know what's lawful and what's not. I think just as a general start, like
Yeah.
on both sides, it's like, a lot of, there's so many deposit requests that I see and all these in these schedules, like in the additional rules and stuff, that are just not lawful. And I see so many people paying them and like, you're not going to get that back,
Yeah.
So it's just, working.
And
with
often I will say it's not necessarily the landlord, intentionally trying to think.
Exactly,
They just
yeah.
don't realize that
yeah.
a pet deposit is not lawful in
Yeah.
Ontario. So
yeah. And they just are like, well, if they have pets, I want to have some kind of compensation for it or reassurance that, I'm going to get something. But that's like, the landlord's going in with good intentions. And then just like tenants are like, okay, yeah, sure. Or, they don't realize it. That
Well,
it's
because they're
not
afraid
lawful.
if they don't sign it or
Yeah.
if they
They
don't
won't
pay
get the
for it, they
space.
won't
Yeah.
get the
Just-
space.
yeah,
Exactly.
Because there is such a limited,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree with you.
competitive.
Like that really, it brings into question, can you have the perfect rental regardless of what you're paying and where it's located and
Mhm.
how great the natural light is and all those things that were on your important
Yeah.
to, wish list if you end up,
you can if you have an agent who supports you and does
I love
the
it.
homework.
Gabriella, you're like, you
Yes.
thinking, talking sound bites. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So
Because you have to have the agent to do the homework for
Yeah.
you.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And walk you
And-
through and explain what you're
Exactly.
signing.
And then you know
Yeah.
exactly what you're getting.
Yeah. And I think there's just so many clauses in there that like sometimes when you look at it as a tenant, you're just looking and you're like, is this a normal clause? Like something where like
Seems
for
innocuous,
instance,
but
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
like it's something like for instance, like the tenant will be responsible for any repairs under $100. That's a very common clause.
Yeah.
And it's pretty standard. But as a tenant, you would think, oh my God, my landlord's trying to screw me out of my money and trying to have me
Mhm.
fix their own house. But like, no, that's not, how that's used. It's
Normal wear and
for a
tear.
light bulb or
Like a
something
normal
is
wear
what
and
it's
tear.
used for,
Yeah.
right? But just like having someone guide you through even these, like, it's not I'd say it's relatively minor, but it's like, you might have questions about it.
So let me ask you guys a question. Real estate professionals capable of negotiating on a client's behalf, capable of navigating a really tricky rental market, which I think we can all agree we're in, for better, for worse. Like there are deals to be had. There's also very competitive situations that go on. But an agent skilled in being able to negotiate that, assist you with the process, tell you all your blind spots, walk you through the legal part of it, set up showings on your behalf. So you've got a schedule instead of you trying to book with, 25 landlords on a Saturday, scheduling all the showings on your behalf. Why would somebody choose to not work with a professional? I'm genuinely, curious because I don't see anybody, and you don't pay them. They're compensated by the landlord of the property that or the listing agent of the property that you choose to rent, even though that your agent is hired to represent your interests.
Why would you not hire an agent?
I can't think
who
of
would
why
do your homework for you,
doing all
do
the
the
hard
work for you, and you don't even have to pay them.
Yeah,
I agree.
If you don't, you're just doing my job for free.
Like buying a lottery ticket. Like seriously.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about like lack of awareness in the marketplace. It exists a little bit, I think, because very often, especially when we have somebody on the younger side of that, tenant profile. We talked about the average person leaving home somewhere. The age of household formation in Ontario is in and around 26. So whether you're leaving student housing or you're leaving your, your parents' house for the first time, or a roommate situation, most people are forming their own household in and around the age of 26. And so in the younger end of that tenant profile, very often parents will be involved in the rental search. And I will always ask the question when, mom and dad show up, have you guys thought about whether or not this makes the most financial sense for the both of you? Because to be sure, the kids, and when I say kids, we're talking about, young adults. Young adults. I don't know. Was I young at 26? Emily, you're older than that now, but like, are we still young?
I was in home ownership at 23.
But
you don't
fair
need
enough.
to brag here. Like, come on.
But times were different then. I find that the economy was different.
The economy was different, I think, as well too. I bought my first rental property at 23, and it was different. And I want to be clear, we did a previous podcast on, the fact that it's still very attainable, but it is different. For the reality is that most people at 23 are still in the rental market, at least at this time in this place. But it doesn't mean that it has to be that way. And so very often we have, the parents of kids who show up and they're like, I can't believe that you're going to spend $3,000 a month on this apartment. Is there an opportunity for a joint partnership sometimes with those clients to be able to make it a win-win to keep those kids out of it? And what does that look like? Because I don't think that there's a lot of awareness out of the ability to keep your kids out of the rental housing market. And sometimes the awareness needs to come from the kids talking to their parents about it. Sometimes it's the parents talking to their kids. And often there's a misunderstanding that this opportunity, that there's an opportunity for this that exists. So what does that look like?
Yeah, a lot of times it's, first of all, it looks like almost like an overqualified tenant, right? Like these kids have, I shouldn't say kids because they're, people in their 20s, right? These adults like have really great jobs. It's more just like the lack of
down
funds
payment.
for down payment. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes from the parent. It's not where it comes from the parents, but it's not in the form of, oh, I just have, $300 extra $1,000 just sitting in the bank. Let me just give it to my daughter. It's more so, if you're a homeowner as a parent and you have paid off or you have a lot of equity in your house, it's talking about how you can get access to that equity to, assist in a down payment, or, maybe you're having, not necessarily co-signing, but you can also kind of be, again, partners in it, where, different parts of like share. I wouldn't say shares, but
the parent buys it and the child pays
you're both
the mortgage on it.
Mortgage or
there's many
schedules.
different variations of this. So you mentioned one, Gabriella, where the parent buys it. So it's actually the parent leveraging equity from resources they have, whether it's equity in their own home, savings, and they're
in partnership together.
They're in partnership. So the tenant, the tenant is the adult child who is again great job, and so maybe there's a joint ownership agreement that goes on where the tenant or the child and the parent own it together. Very often I worked with a buyer who for years and years didn't qualify on their own. This year, the parent was able to lend them the down payment, but there was a very clear legal agreement that in 5 years, when the mortgage comes up and there has been some ability to gain equity in the property because that mortgage pay down has happened, that the mortgage is going to be refinanced and the parents will be paid out. Because although, many of our down payments, you mentioned it, earlier, Emily, the bank of mom and dad is where a lot of these down payments are coming from. It doesn't mean that the funds necessarily have to be gifted in
No.
permanency. What
Exactly.
it means is that you're going to
Yeah.
work alongside somebody to
Yeah.
help
Unless you
figure
really
out
have that
what it
kind of
is.
equity and you can do it.
Yeah.
Sure, if
Yeah.
you've got, I don't know, I didn't grow
Yeah.
up in a family where they were prepared to,
No.
anyone
No.
was prepared to write me a check for
No.
$100,000.
No.
So
But they are out there.
They are
and
out there, but
hey,
I
are.
think that's
I
the thing is the problem is the narrative. It's like, oh, if you're not super rich, like you're screwed and you're
Yeah.
not going to get a house in
And
this
it's a
market.
false
And that's
narrative.
not true.
I agree.
Exactly.
It's a false
exactly.
narrative.
So that's why it's
So-
important to have these conversations about other ways because yes, the market has changed and you have to approach it differently, but it doesn't mean that homeownership isn't a realistic goal for most people.
especially for multi-generational families where you've got multi-generations renting, there is
Yeah.
no reason in most cases why you couldn't, get like a modestly priced duplex where
Mhm.
the total cumulative cost of both of
Yeah.
those rents are a mortgage payment and both people could be
Exactly.
living in separate spaces. So I don't know.
Mhm.
I always like to kind of end the conversation on that because we talk about how expensive, renting a property in, the GTA can be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's clear, it's nonsensical. You've got the resources to be able to, make a purchase. You should be
Mhm.
getting into the homeownership market as soon as you can. But for other people, they just don't realize that there is the possibility. And that's
Mhm.
why I think you have to talk to a real estate professional about, what
Yeah.
that looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember, I've been selling real estate for a really long time. I've been in this industry for 22 years. I remember one of my favorite stories was a client that reached out to me looking for advice on how to navigate a rent increase, an above average rent increase. And we got into it and said, well, why are you renting at all? You have good income. And it came down to the fact they didn't have a down payment. They were able to partner with another member of their family. They bought together and it was just a wonderful opportunity for two people to get into the
Yeah.
market, and those opportunities do exist.
Mhm. Yeah.
So in closing, the perfect rental, have we determined that it does exist or it doesn't exist?
It does.
You're standing by the fact that it does exist. So you feel confident, Gabriella, that you can help somebody navigate finding the perfect spot, the perfect lease, the perfect landlord relationship.
It's never going to be 100% perfect, but close enough.
It's like marriage, right?
Yeah.
Do you have
There
100%
is no perfect marriage.
Yeah, I don't know. You have a pretty good marriage though. You've been married for how many years, Gabriella?
I've been married for 30, coming on 36, together for 44 years.
Oh my goodness. You should even tell people that. No one even believes that that's a true statement.
Yeah.
It is a true statement, but it's never been a smooth ride. I mean, there's ups and downs. It's like a box, and everybody has to contribute to that box.
I love it. That's great. So just like rent.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, we don't want to see anybody in a 36-year lease. I want to be
No,
clear on
please
that.
don't.
Stick, keep your long-term
Marriage.
commitments to
Marriage.
your significant other.
Yeah.
Emily, does the perfect lease
Yeah.
exist?
I'm going to stick with my original statement. I think amazing leases do exist. I don't believe a perfect one, but I think, really great ones do. Yes.
I love it. Well, if anybody is interested in finding that perfect lease
Yes.
or that perfect
Mhm.
not
really
lease
great one.
opportunity, that first perfect opportunity to get into the housing market and get out of the leasing market, then, we would love to be of service to them.
Mhm.
So if anybody is listening, is interested in having a conversation, you can reach out to either of these two amazing women or my office in general. It is always, always, always such an honor to be of service to our clients, regardless of whether it is an $800 basement apartment. I don't think they exist anymore, but it doesn't matter. We're gonna
$2,000
do-
basement apartment
to
lease.
the, oh goodness, that whole other
Yeah.
podcast
no.
episode.
Exactly.
But thank you guys for watching
Yeah.
today. It is always an honor to be able to share our knowledge with you, and we can't wait to catch up with you again soon.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone.